imagine what an F1 tank turbo V6 engine from an 80s McLaren F1 race car would be like in a Porsche 911 Turbo? Well, I'm about to find out, and believe it or not, this is exactly what Porsche did back in the mid-80s, after they'd been approached by McLaren to develop the V6 F1 Turbo engine. And without an F1 car to put the engine in and shake it down, Porsche simply put it in a mid-80s 930 Turbo and hit the road to do some shakedown testing. Times were certainly different back then. First couple of gears, no pressure.
Yeah, it doesn't run like a normal
engine, sure.
For sure. But it's kind of the way it should be, right?
Even the pedals feel slightly different.
Yeah.
Especially the throttle, the position of it. You drove it at Goodwood, right?
Only drove it up the hill at Goodwood, yeah. I think twice we did it because the weather was so shitty.
We were there on the Friday. What a fucking shit storm mud bath that was.
Yeah, terrible.
Nuts.
Terrible.
So how did all this happen? Well, Lanzante, the British motorsports and engineering company with ties to McLaren Racing, managed to convince a Woking-based firm to part with a backstash of 14 1.5-litre V6 F1 turbo engines, developed by Hans Metzger, built by Porsche, and used by McLaren F1 during the mid-80s. Lanzante has built 11 of these cars with former engines used by the likes of Alain Prost and Niki Lauda. Now, what makes this car that I'm driving so special is that the engine in it was driven in 1987 at the Austrian GP by the fast Swede Stefan Johansson, who just happens to be sitting right next to me right now. And to make it even cooler, he painted it. Got a bit of an on-off clutch.
Yeah, it's very much like a racing clutch. It's like fucking grabs the meter.
Like there's no travel.
No.
It feels kind of racy in the sense of the setup, the steering, the throttle response.
Yeah.
So Stefan, you've raced Formula One, you've raced Indy, you've raced at one at Le Mans, you've raced sports cars. Tell me how you got into racing.
Well, it started quite young. My dad was racing, club racing back in Sweden, so I kind of grew up with it. You know, I used to go with him to races when I was 3-4 years old. Then he got me my first go-kart when I was 8. You couldn't start racing until you were 12 back then. But you know, I practiced with all the much older guys than me in the kind of local club we had. So I got a lot of really good training very young, you know, to race against sort of national level guys in those early days. And then I started racing when I was 12 until I was 18. Then I got into Formula 4 and F3 and so on after that.
So that leads nicely into this car. Tell me how it was at McLaren in '87.
Oh, it's fantastic. I mean, McLaren was setting the standard at that time. You know, absolutely. I mean, you know, they sort of raised the level that every other team had to follow, you know, in terms of presentation, preparation, just the whole package really. And, you know, when I joined them, they were just the current world champions, basically. So, you know, it was kind of an obvious choice for me when I got that opportunity, you know, to go that way.
So that was a big deal.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who was your teammate in '87?
Alain Prost.
Yeah. 4-time world champion.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know.
No pressure there.
No, not at all.
I often feel he's sort of overlooked in, you know, with 4 world championships. You hardly hear Prost mentioned in a sea of Sennas and Hamiltons and Jackie Stewarts and Vettels and Schumachers.
It's weird because he, in my opinion, in our period, he was by far the best driver if you take the overall package.
What made him the best driver?
Because he had the ability to look at the bigger picture, you know. I mean, you know, you didn't have to win every battle to win the war.
Yeah. Oh, got it.
You know, and that was his MO. You know, I mean, Ayrton was an incredible, spectacular driver, unbelievably fast. But in the real big picture, I think that was to his detriment many times. You know.
Interesting.
Whereas Alain, I mean, and not only that, but Alain, the way he managed the race, the way he managed the car, you know, the setup and everything was like a real eye-opener for me. I learned more in 1 year with him than I did in my whole career before that.
No way. How much power would it make in race trim back then?
In race trim, probably around 900, 950. Wow. I did qualifying, probably around 1100, 1200.
And what would it rev to?
If I remember correctly, about 11.5, I think, 12.
That's got to be intoxicating. That much power, that much revs.
Yeah, I mean, it was. I mean, for me, that was the best era of Formula One. You know, because the engines were crazy. You know, super powerful and very raw. You know, there was no driver aids or anything, so you just had to control the thing with your throttle. You know, with the foot basically. So.
How was he driving that car then?
I mean, they were a handful. I mean, they really were, you know, and but that's what a driver wants, you know. You want to work with a car and try to get the best out of it. So it was an amazing car to ride.
I get it. Awesome. That is awesome to hear right there. How'd you get involved in it?
Well, it was Paris. From Paris Mullins from Ogara contacted me about a year and a little bit ago. Said he had this project they were working on, and he was interested to have me do an art car. And I didn't really know the details so much about it at the time. But I said, well, that sounds interesting. You know, sounds like a fun project. So we started talking about it, and then obviously, you know, then I found out more details that it was actually a car with a tag turbo F1. And
they didn't tell you that to begin with?
And not only was it a tag turbo, it was actually my tag turbo engine. I raced at the Austrian Grand Prix in '87. So it was this is a most unique kind of art car, I think, in the world, because it's so many components that just kind of came together, you know.
Well, you talk about art cars, and I'm going to focus on that for a minute, because when I think of art cars, I think of Warhol to begin with, and BMW did a whole series of art cars, and I've done some art cars with rattle cans, and I'm all about color blocking and bold colors. Yeah. And it would appear you're about bold colors as well. You're in some very good company with some major artists when you say art car and Stefan Johansson, tag turbo art car. That must have been a great honor to have had the opportunity to do a car.
Absolutely, no, absolutely. You know, it's a huge honor for me, and kind of a big step in my career as an artist. This is, you know, probably it's absolutely the major project I've done so far, you know. And I think it turned out really well, actually, without blowing my own horn. But it's, you know, the whole group of people came together and thought about how to do it and make it look as good as possible. And I think the result was pretty good.
Yeah, you got the ball cap to match and the shoes. This was obviously a different type of canvas, right?
Yeah.
A different type of blank canvas.
Yeah.
Not a flat surface.
Yeah.
Paris, thanks for coming out. Ogara, what is it?
It's a house of luxury is how we like to refer to it. But yeah, we represent a lot of very big brands in the Southern California area.
Now, you mentioned Lanzante.
Yes.
Tell me about Lanzante.
So
the history.
Yeah,
for those that don't know.
Amazing family. So their real claim to fame, especially with McLaren, was they were the ones that ran the McLaren F1 GTR that won Le Mans in 1995.
No way.
So Dean and his father and their team, ran it. He was good mates with Ron Dennis, and then it just kind of went from there. But they've always had a reputation of being a racing team and in motorsport. They did a lot of stuff in vintage racing, so they're constantly at Goodwood and all over, and they campaign all kinds of cars, everything from some of the most coveted Ferraris to Ford GTs, all kinds of stuff.
So their background is motorsports.
Yeah.
Tell me what has been done to this F1 engine to make it streetable, usable, practical in this 87 930 Tag Turbo?
Yeah, so that was probably the biggest challenge. So it was a joint venture with Dean and Cosworth.
Okay.
And that was kind of the whole thing of basically, okay, how do you get the thing to just start? I mean, think about starting a Formula One car, right? With the starter in the back. Exactly. Yeah, you've got to use the rod in the back. So all that stuff. I mean, everything had to be completely engineered for this, but he wanted to retain obviously as much of the engine as possible, and also, he wanted people to use the car. So that was the other thing. If you make it too extreme, people won't drive it. You detune it too much, nobody will. And so it needed to idle in traffic. It needed to not overheat. It's still got some finicky things about it. You want to let the thing heat up obviously before you start romping on it and all that. But yeah, no, it was quite a bit to get it to do it. So
yeah, it's a fine line, and often my pet peeve, people are on the wrong side of the fine line of a streetable race car.
Right.
It's a delicate balance to actually have a streetable race car that functions in real world environments.
Yeah.
And this so far seems to have achieved that goal. You call it a Porsche or you call it a Tag Turbo? What do you call it?
We just refer to it as Tag Turbo.
Tag Turbo.
I mean, just because that's what the project is called, and yeah, Tag Turbo SJ87. So
is the 930 Turbo itself an 87?
it is.
Okay,
yes,
okay.
I made sure of that.
Okay.
We didn't have to, but I'm such a stickler for detail
Well,
that I made sure that the donor car was a U.S. car.
Yeah.
And it was from 87.
All right,
Just
awesome.
all those little things make it different.
Tell me what the end use or goal of the car is.
Well, I mean, it's really up to whoever ends up owning it. For us, it was such an exciting project to be a part of. I mean, we're not a Porsche dealer, right? But we do so many projects with Dean, and I'm constantly with him in Petersfield, and he's got his iPad with him, and he's got all these ideas, and he'll run some of them. Yeah, he'll run some of them by me. And this was something that he just said to me. He said, "Look, I know you guys aren't a Porsche dealer, but I want to give you kind of first crack at this if you guys want to be a part of it." And even though we're not a Porsche dealer, like Tom's personal car for the longest time was a Porsche. He loves Porsches, and I just like anything. I'm pretty brand agnostic. And so when he told us about the project, and he said, do you want to do one? And we were going through the list of engines that he got from Zach, and one of them on there was Stefan Johansson from 87.
Did you know Stefan?
Yeah. So we had done an amazing event at his gallery that he had in Santa Monica, and obviously being a petrol head and a motorsport guy, I mean everyone knows who he is.
Yeah, you were
but I knew about his second life, right? I knew about this all of his art. Yeah, and especially like I said, being at his studio. And so when I said I want that one, Dean said, "Oh, okay." And I said, we were talking about the spec, and he said, "Well, how do you think you want to do it?" Because everyone was doing all these like period correct colors, root beer brown, and all. Okay. And I said, "I want to have Stefan paint it." And Dean goes, "That's right, he paints. I forgot about it." So obviously, reached out to Stefan, told him what we were thinking about doing, and he was in from it right from the start. And then we just had to figure out how to actually do it.
So walk me through, if we can come this way. To me, it seems like the focus is the hood, or at least from my vision, it's the hood. But talk to me about the concept of where you started and what it was about.
Yes, I mean, we chose this style of my art, obviously, because it absolutely lends itself well to products, actually, in general. And the reason we started with the hood is obviously because that's the most, kind of the biggest flat surface on the car, so a good starting point, and just let it kind of spread across the car. And the way we did it, actually, because I've seen a lot of these art cars, and they look a bit flat and kind of not really crisp, when the paint is on the car. So the idea we came over was to kind of start. I did an original painting work, which we took that and vectorized all the image, the whole image, and then we laid it out with a kind of like a wrap, But then the wrap became like a stencil for the car, So that's why you see it's so. All these brush strokes are so crisp,
Yeah. I was trying to figure out how.
So then we peeled off, and then we painted inside that So the stencil became like the masking tape.
Okay,
you know,
got it.
yeah.
Okay.
And it really, I mean, I think the end result is really.
It's pretty sharp.
So clean and crisp, you know, and then obviously just put some clear coat on top of it.
Tell me about the color selection.
Yeah, so the colors are really, it's based on the color of the car, which was the red, well, Dayglow red, but the red and some of the yellow, and then the rest is the colors of my helmet. So you got the dark blue, you got the 3 different grades of green, which was the leaves on my helmet, you know.
Is this a Swedish thing?
Well, so the leaves is my nickname in Sweden is Little Leaf.
Little Leaf, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Tell me about Little Leaf. What's going on there?
So my dad grew up in a little village called Leaf Town, or abbreviation of that.
Right.
So he was the Leaf, or Leafy, when he was racing. So then in Sweden, anyone who's the son of someone who's even remotely known for anything becomes Little, whatever the dad was called. Yeah. So most people don't even know it. My name is Stefan in Sweden. It's Little Leaf. Everybody knows me as Little Leaf. Yeah. So that's kind of how the leaves came, you know. I've always had the leaves on my helmet and all my, you know, merchandise and everything. Yeah,
I see. Where did you physically paint the car?
We were in Petersfield in England in the middle of the winter, freezing our butts off.
Yeah, that sounds like England.
Well, and it was a long project. I mean, it took a few weeks.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, no, we were there every day for quite a while, you know, doing the whole thing.
That's crazy.
Prepping it and doing all the stuff, you know. So yeah, it's a really fun project.
I got to tell you,
great people, you know. I mean, Dean Lanzante, super professional. I mean, they do a fantastic job, those guys, with all the cars they do. Paris was heavily involved. He's a very creative guy too, you know. And obviously, you know, sort of, we all collaborated on this in a good way, you know.
so this series, I assume, inspired the livery on the car. Is that a correct assumption?
100%, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, so what happened when I started doing these, you know, I did quite a lot of them. No intent to do anything but a painting, but it sort of turns out that it actually lends itself really well to different products, you know.
Got it.
Yeah.
What do you call this?
Well, I don't really call it, and the technique I just call the series of these paintings Memories of a Past Life.
Okay.
Which is basically memories from my racing life. So every one of these paintings are named after different corners around the Formula 1 circuit.
When was the first time you showed your art?
It's only about 7-8 years ago,
really?
really. Yeah.
Here in LA or
Here
somewhere?
yeah, in LA, yeah.
You do have a real clean studio. I don't see a splatter paint anywhere. It's like when I see images of Damon Hirst, he's like paint all over the floor.
I know. I don't know.
What's going on there?
Well, I think being in the racing world my whole life, you know, and that background, because everything is clinical, you know.
Right.
There's no mess anywhere, you know. It's like walking into a hospital when you walk into the race team, you know. So I think that I still have that mindset.
So Dean and the team at Lanzante have managed to recreate a piece of F1 history. Actually 11 of them, and all with a healthy dose of modernity and street ability. It will all feel very familiar to anyone that's driven a Porsche 930 Turbo, yet totally different at the same time, as the way the engine revs and sounds is something altogether unique. It's certainly not for the faint of heart, yet once you find enough open road and nerve to push the rev counter needle to 9,000 RPM and hear the unique engine sound and turbo hiss, it all becomes an intoxicating hit that makes you want to keep driving and shifting on your favorite mountain road, pushing you deeper towards the cars and your own limits. And like all great 911s, the SJ87 keeps you focused as it moves around and hunkers down as it's pushed harder, and you just hope for a little more seat time and open road. The 11 lucky owners of each of the Lanzante Tag Turbos will no doubt own a unique piece of F1 and Porsche history and stand out in a sea of highly modified 930 turbos, and whoever ends up buying this particular car will also have a drivable piece of art, one of one, never to be duplicated or replicated, painted by the guy who raced the F1 Mclaren back in 1987, the fast Swede, Little Leaf. Stefan Johansson, just proving that where there's a will, there's a way, and driven by passion and determination, the TAG Turbo will keep the boost and vintage F1 spirit alive. Stay boosted, my friends.